Welcome to Fast Tracking the Day of God. This podcast is for those eager to seriously engage with God's invitation to collaborate with Him. This collaboration isn't merely an option, it's a foundational partnership, utterly integral to our restoration and the healing of a broken world. Through this collaboration, we will also fulfill the final prophecy, sharing the eternal gospel with the world, a message largely unknown to most people today. 4 centuries before, when Abram journeyed through Canaan, its inhabitants still had the chance to turn to God. God had designated this land, strategically located at the nexus of all travel routes, to be the home of a model nation. This nation was intended to inspire curiosity, invite participation in its blessings, and foster a desire in others to emulate it. Every event, from their miraculous deliverance from Egyptian bondage and the crossing of the Red Sea, to God's loving care over them for 40 years and their passage across the Jordan River, was meticulously orchestrated to awaken their understanding of the Creator of heaven and earth. The Exodus narrative clearly demonstrates God's desire to achieve His purposes with the least possible suffering. Pharaoh could have chosen to grant God's request to free his people. Instead, he opted for maximum pain, yet ultimately achieved the same outcome. After the Great Flood approximately 4,400 years ago, all nations originated from Noah's 3 sons. These nations later dispersed around 4,200 years ago, following the events at the Tower of Babel. The biblical record indicates that soon after, humanity began to corrupt itself and stray from God's path. A significant change post-flood was God's alteration of the original human diet, which contributed to a rapid decrease in human lifespans. Around 4,100 years ago, God called Abram, a descendant of Noah, to trust Him. Through this trust, Abram was destined to become a blessing to all humanity. During his journey, Abram established at least 4 altars as monuments, serving as reminders to return to the Creator God. Archaeological evidence suggests that some Canaanite families did indeed come to worship the God of Abraham, though they were a minority. The Canaanite nations were given 400 years to abandon their abhorrent, corrupt, and sick practices and return to the Creator. During this period, God Himself grieved over the countless victims of their escalating violence. He loved the Canaanites and did not wish for them to continue their generational descent into depravity. His desire was for them to return to Him and be saved. A similar situation exists today. God desires for people to be saved and not to self-destruct. Choosing anything other than God ultimately leads to death. We therefore have a responsibility to present God's offer wisely. Regrettably, the vast majority of the Canaanites continued to serve Satan, squandering their period of probation.
God's character is defined by selfless love, evident in the creation and sustenance of everything: time, space, gravity, matter, and energy. The universe was designed to operate on principles of selfless love and trust, which constitute justice and righteousness. However, rebellion, born from self-centeredness, disrupted this harmonious fabric of the universe. Its self-destructive nature threatens to destroy all reality. Lucifer was warned about this obliterating effect, but continued his slander, insisting that God could not be trusted and was not the sole source of truth, life, and happiness. The betrayal by Adam and Eve introduced self-centeredness and its consequent distrust, leading to the current deadly bondage suffered by all living beings on our planet. Many misunderstand God's character, and it is our task to help them see clearly. The God of the Bible actively intervenes in history. From Genesis 3 to Revelation 20, we learn how He not only limits and mitigates the damage of rebellion and allows Satan's true government to be revealed, but also develops His plan to rescue the entire universe. Yahweh's actions in Canaan aimed to re-establish justice and peace. The Hebrew Bible consistently shows that when God's principles were rejected, He would withdraw His protection, leaving Israel vulnerable to oppression by its enemies. When Moses conveyed God's command to Pharaoh to release his people, Yahweh's initial intent was not to destroy Egypt. This destruction only occurred after Pharaoh's persistent rebellion. God's original purpose for the Canaanites was dispossession, not annihilation. Israel's conquest involved dispossessing, ejecting, and dissipating the inhabitants of the Promised Land. Now, regarding the Canaanite religious objects, God commanded their total destruction because they were used to worship demons. Only those Canaanites who retreated into fortified cities, defiantly resisted God's plan for the Israelites, and hardened their hearts were destined for destruction. The Canaanites had enough evidence about the true God. The stories they heard about Noah and the flood clearly show them what was right and what wasn't. Consider this. Shem, Noah's son, lived 600 years. He was 390 years old when Abraham was born. Shem died approximately 35 years after Abraham passed away.
In other words, the destruction of the Canaanites was not an arbitrary act of God, but the result of a continuous rejection to amend their evil ways and return to Him. Not only did they have those altars that Abraham built in many places, but they also had their uncle Shem, who was 9 generations older than them, and he was still alive for them to consult. Why does it matter? Because many people, including Bible scholars, overlook the most important issue of God wanting to save everybody, and that He gives us plenty of opportunities to return to Him. Unfortunately, they chose to oppose God's instructions. God desires the salvation of all, yet He grants free will. However, He insists that individuals understand the truth to make informed decisions. Throughout history, including the time of Rahab, Achan, and the Gibeonites, people have been free to choose their path. Protection and disfavor were not arbitrary. Individuals enjoying a relationship with Yahweh could forfeit their favored standing through rebellion, while those under disfavor could find life by submitting to Yahweh's authority. Something similar takes place nowadays. Each one of us needs to choose. It's not a once-in-a-lifetime choice, but a series of continuous choices. The Apostle Paul discovered that the best way to keep oneself on the right track is being an ambassador for Christ. That's how he stated, "Woe is me if I don't preach the gospel." 1 Corinthians 9:16.
God's ultimate plan for Israel was to serve as a preview of the Messianic era, embodying what the new earth will be. Jesus is known as the Prince of Peace, reflecting God's anti-war nature. In the new earth, war will be absent, replaced by peace, freedom, joy, and righteousness. Concerning the historical accounts of God assisting the Israelites in their territorial conquests, as someone said, God lowered Himself into the sewer of humanity. This deep involvement was purposed so that humanity could, in time, achieve great good for the universe. We are given the privilege of sharing God's indestructible kindness with a world that, like the Canaanites, gets worse with every generation. Contact us at indestructiblekindness@gmail.com. God wants you to receive His Spirit so you become an agent of His love. The time to act is now. As previously discussed, a proper understanding of both biblical and secular history requires acknowledging the cosmic conflict. War and its devastating consequences were never part of God's initial design for the world. He is actively working to restore everlasting peace throughout our world and the universe. However, to achieve this, God must eliminate evil definitively, demonstrating not only immense power, but also profound wisdom. Ultimately, When God is the agent, judging, waging war, and delivering justice are all synonymous actions. We are not only called to represent this supreme, generous, patient, and wonderful God, but the author and sustainer of reality. We are indeed his ambassadors. What a great honor!